It's 1968, and two friends in Germany just played their first show as part of a krautrock band called Organization. They would quickly develop an obsession with drum machines and synthesizers and emerge as electronic music pioneers, Kraftwerk. And 2 weeks later, ecstasy was invented. Just kidding. Their next album fully embraced the repetitive electronic sound they became known for, which was pivotal in popularizing electronic music as a standalone genre. Kraftwerk would end up influencing modern-day music genres such as techno, synthpop, and hip-hop. But to further understand how EDM became its own genre, let's fly across to the USA real quick. It was 1969. Neil Armstrong just became the first man to walk on the moon. Chaos ensued at the hands of Charles Manson, and the Woodstock Festival was well underway.
And it's 1, 2, 3, what are we fighting for?
The 60s gave birth to iconic artists such as The Who and Jimi Hendrix. But it was the Beatles who occupied the musical throne and would change the way music was produced. The Beatles introduced the use of electronic instruments to their productions, most notably the Moog synthesizer that was used on their Abbey Road album. These early synthesizer sounds were part of a psychedelic rock genre that became inspirational for the rock bands that followed. Let's jump forward to 1973 now. It was summer in New York City, and hip-hop was on the rise. There was an economic crisis happening. The manufacturing industry was in freefall, and opportunities in the music industry were in short supply. The discotheques and clubs began to close as the funds for entertainment evaporated. But this created an environment for the youth to bring their music and sound systems out to the streets. Early hip-hop artist DJ Kool Herc was known for a technique where he would mix one song into another using two turntables, a style of DJing that would lay the foundations of turntablism, a definition that wouldn't be coined until the mid-1990s. Sugar Hill Records brought live disco bands and MCs together to record some of the first rap music. The Sugar Hill Gang released Rapper's Delight, using Chick's disco track Good Times, which introduced hip-hop to a much wider audience. Electronic music now formed the backbone for genres such as funk, R&B, and Motown. But this was only the beginning of things to come. Not far from New York, we had the birth of a different genre of music: disco. Disco was a huge genre emerging on the US East Coast. Japanese-based electronics manufacturer Roland launched into the market, bringing new technology that music producers were quick to experiment with.
We design the future.
Disco hit Rock Your Baby by George McCrae was one of the first to utilize a drum machine, with the drummer being completely replaced by Roland's TR-77 synthesizer. 3 years later, American artist Donna Summer released the timeless disco classic I Feel Love, offering a commanding synthesized backing track. The track was produced by Italian singer-songwriter Giorgio Moroder, who described Summer's work as the start of electronic dance. Disco's rise coincided with DJ advancements like multi-turntable setups along with mixers. This would shape a change in the makeup of dance music. When a song was about to end, the DJs could now switch between tracks in a smooth, seamless transition, keeping the rhythm alive on the dance floor. The disco era peaked a couple years later in most major US cities. New York was perhaps the most notable, playing host to the famous Paradise Garage, which would later be credited as a major influence on modern-day dance clubs. But as the love for disco grew, so did the hate. It's July of 1979. Baseball season is in full swing, but the Chicago White Sox are having attendance issues.
Harry Carey and Jimmy Pearsall were at Comiskey Park as the White Sox try to break a 6-game losing streak.
Disco Demolition Night is promoted far and wide across Illinois. Fans who bring a disco record to the ballpark will be admitted for 98 cents to watch the albums get blown up in between the doubleheader games.
Disco sucks! Disco sucks!
And no one is prepared for what's about to happen. The game sold out to a capacity of 50,000 fans. After the loss of the first game, disco hater Steve Dahl took to the field to commence the explosion. The event then took a turn for the worst, as 5,000 fans rushed onto the field, inciting a mass riot. The days and weeks that followed included public criticism of the event. The debacle triggered a nationwide anger towards disco music, and the popularity of disco music declined significantly, which forced record companies to relabel new albums as dance music. However, record labels became scared and stayed clear of signing any new disco artist, which would ultimately welcome in the post-disco era. Taking advantage of disco's steep decline was Paradise Garage resident DJ Larry Levan, who helped take the genre underground with his experimentation of drum machines and synthesizers. Levan's productions welcomed in an electronic post-disco sound that became known as Garage House. The 80s saw the most significant rise of electronic dance music and the evolution of its sound. Genres that are still thriving today, such as house and techno, were a product of the 80s club scene. The music industry was revived with the MIDI, which brought computers, instruments, and other hardware together to communicate for the very first time. And hip-hop would continue its vast influence on club culture, with famous hip-hop artists using turntables more like a musical instrument. But there was one subgenre which started to reach mainstream heights: electro. US hip-hop and electro artist Africa Bambaataa released Planet Rock, which brought the unique sounds of the Roland's TR-808 to the dance floor. This helped develop the electro style and added to the work of Kraftwerk from the previous decade. Back in Chicago, DJ Frankie Knuckles was bringing various styles of dance music to the dance floor. And 2 years later, early forms of house music were introduced. Fellow Chicago DJ Jesse Saunders produced the track On and On, which boasted a mesmerizing electronic sound, once again with inspiration from Kraftwerk. The track benefited from the TR-808 drum machine and the Roland TB-303, with these the essential ingredients of the early house sound. House music continued to gain momentum as it spread across Europe, with a small Balearic island called Ibiza playing host to a thriving music culture. It revolved around the Amnesia nightclub, which attracted people from all over Europe, allowing Ibiza to become the first hub for rave culture. This also became a trend across the UK, with other significant clubs establishing themselves, most notably Manchester's famous Hacienda nightclub. Meanwhile, ecstasy took over as the party drug of choice. Soon, Hacienda's popularity exploded due to its association with the rise of acid house and rave culture. Roland was once again at the center of this latest electronic evolution thanks to their iconic TB-303 bassline synthesizer, which produced a never-heard-before squelching acid sound. At a similar time when the acid house movement was gaining traction across Europe, techno had started to emerge in the clubs of Detroit. Derek May is widely credited as the pioneer of techno after releasing the classic dance anthem Strings of Life. The track helped raise the profile of techno in Europe in a big way, with Germany and the UK taking a specific liking to this new genre originating in the US. Soon, all-night warehouse parties were attended by clubbers in the thousands. Along with house and acid house, techno now dominated the club scene on an international scale. The rave scene in the UK and Germany would shape the emergence of trance music. Originating in Germany, trance quickly flooded dance floors throughout the rest of Europe in places like Belgium and the Netherlands. A genre characterized for its repetitive melodic phrases and instrumental nature. Big-hitting DJs like Paul Van Dyk would all help perpetuate its popularity amongst electronic music fans. It wasn't just trance, though. As rave music evolved into more experimental styles, the UK influenced bass-heavy genres with faster tempos, notably jungle and UK garage, which later gave rise to drum and bass and dubstep. Across the channel in France, electronic dance producers combined samples from disco tracks with filter and phaser effects. This retro style became known as French House, responsible for iconic electronic duo Daft Punk. EDM gained momentum in Europe as the new millennium approached, with genres like hard house and experimental emerging, and techno going mainstream in Germany and the UK. In Europe, dance music reigned supreme, but an extremely different situation was unfolding in the United States.
We've got another drug.
Call it MDMA for short. Users have a word for it, ecstasy.
Where federal agents say the potential for abuse is enormous.
There's enough cocaine and heroin and marijuana out there, and LSD and PCP.
The Drug Enforcement Administration is announcing its intention to place the drug known as MDMA, or by the street name ecstasy, under emergency controls of Schedule 1.
The government was not pleased with rave culture due to its association with recreational drugs like ecstasy. Senator Joseph Biden introduced the Rave Act.
Stiff criminal penalties for anyone who held a rave. I would put the son of a gun in jail. Arrest the promoter. Find a rationale.
This was the nail in the coffin on raves nationwide, forcing house and techno further underground. Despite the problems in the US, the evolution of EDM continued in Europe with the introduction of electro house. The genre was brought to the mainstream by Italian DJ producer Benny Benassi with his track Satisfaction. The success continued for electro house when Eric Prydz released Call on Me, reaching #1 in multiple music charts around the globe. French duo Justice released their album titled Cross. It was influenced by rock music, which resonated with the US crowd. Electronic core then became a trend in the US and UK alongside dubstep. Dubstep grew even more popular, with American DJ Skrillex taking full advantage of the genre's success in the UK and feeding it to US audiences. He produced 2 EPs in quick succession, later becoming an 8-time Grammy Award winner. It was at this time when the term EDM was being promoted by the American music industry, attempting to rebrand rave culture in the US.
It's obvious from this point of view that dance music has officially taken over America.
At the same time, electro house subgenres like Dirty Dutch in Europe and Fidget in the US emerged, inspiring the first wave of EDM producers to break into the American market, including Hardwell and Martin Garrix. Several years earlier, DJs Axwell, Steve Angelo, and Sebastian Ingrosso formed the supergroup Swedish House Mafia, becoming the first group to take advantage of the market opportunity and were considered pioneers of this revolutionized genre. The door swung open for the genre to build into a commercial juggernaut, with dance music suddenly performed as extravagant shows as more and more DJs collaborated with artists outside of the electronic dance community. Between 2010 and the present day, the term EDM has monopolized the dance music market. Although it shouldn't be used as a term to describe all electronic dance music genres, as it often is. The wave of electronic dance culture has flowed from LA to Berlin to Sydney, sweeping all continents. People of all ethnicities and cultures are coming together more than ever to experience electronic music in all its glory. Yet, amidst its remarkable rise, there's a vibrant underground scene that thrives away from the glitz and glamour of the mainstream. These grassroots events remain integral to electronic music culture, dispensing raw sounds for specific subgenres, ensuring the audience remembers the electronic origins far away from the commercial world.